My parents broke into my apartment, stole my daughter's $17,000 antique cello, and spent every dollar building a swimming pool for my sister. When my 91-year-old great-grandmother found out, she didn't scream or cry. She just smiled, pulled out a folder from her desk, and said 4 words that made my parents' faces drain of color. "That cello's in trust." 3 days later, a lawyer showed up at their door with documents that turned their entire world upside down. My name is Diana. I'm 34, a paralegal, and a single mother to the most incredible 10-year-old girl named Lucy. This is the story of how my family betrayed us in the cruelest way possible, and how one elderly woman with sharp instincts and sharper paperwork taught them a lesson they will never forget. If you're here for this, please hit subscribe and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. You're going to want to stay until the end because what happened next is absolutely unbelievable. Let me take you back to September, to the week my daughter's heart broke, to the moment I realized my own family had been planning this betrayal for weeks, to the apartment where every evening at 4:15, the most beautiful sound in the world would fill our tiny home. That sound was Lucy, playing a 1923 Heinrich Müller cello named Harriet. A cello that wasn't just an instrument. It was a legacy, a gift, a piece of history. And my parents sold it like it was a piece of junk at a garage sale. Our apartment wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, a bathroom with tiles that never looked clean no matter how hard I scrubbed, and a kitchen with a window that jammed every time you tried to open it. We rented it from what I thought was family property. I paid rent every month like clockwork, never late, never questioned. That detail becomes important later. Trust me. But inside those cramped walls, we had something most families never find. We had peace. We had routine. We had Lucy's music. Every afternoon, like clockwork, Lucy would come home from school, drop her backpack by the door, wash her hands, and disappear into her bedroom. A few moments later, the sound would start. Deep, rich, emotional. The kind of sound that made you stop whatever you were doing and just listen. That was Harriet. Harriet wasn't just any cello. She was a 1923 Heinrich Müller. German-made, hand-carved. There was a hairline crack along the top plate that had been professionally restored sometime in the 1960s. If you ran your finger across the varnish, you could feel where the old wood met the repair. It felt like a scar. A beautiful scar that had healed perfectly. My great-grandmother, Eleanor, gave that cello to Lucy 3 years ago, right after her very first recital. Eleanor had been a professional cellist. She'd played at Carnegie Hall in 1958. She'd carried that instrument across 2 marriages, 5 states, and more than 60 years of life. And then one afternoon, in front of a small crowd of parents and music teachers, she handed it to my 7-year-old daughter like she was passing down a crown. "This cello is worth more than most people's cars," Eleanor told me afterward, her voice sharp and clear the way retired music professors always sound. "But the real value isn't the price tag, it's the memory. Every concert hall it's ever been in, every note ever played, it remembers." Lucy named it Harriet after a composer she'd read about in a library book. From that moment on, she treated that cello like a living thing. Every morning she'd whisper, "Good morning, Harriet," like she was waking up a friend. She'd polish the wood with a microfiber cloth. She'd check the strings, tune them carefully, talk to the instrument like it could hear her. I know how that sounds, but if you'd seen the way Lucy's face lit up when she played, you'd understand. That cello wasn't just an object, it was her world. Eleanor had done something smart when she gave Lucy that gift. She had a notarized letter drawn up. Official, legal, signed in front of witnesses. It stated clearly that the cello was a gift to Lucy, held in trust, with specific instructions about its care and ownership. I scanned that letter into my Google Drive the same week. The original went into Eleanor's filing cabinet alongside all her other legal documents. At the time, I thought Eleanor was just being overly cautious. Turned out, she was being brilliant. Sunday dinners at my parents' house were a tradition I dreaded. My father, Gerald, sat at the head of the table like a king overseeing his kingdom. My mother, Pamela, played the role of the perfect hostess, smiling, serving, making sure everyone's glass was full and everyone saw her doing it. My younger sister, Kristen, would arrive 20 minutes late every single time with her twin 7-year-old boys who ran through the house like wild animals, knocking over decorations, screaming, breaking things, and nobody said a word. Not one word. Kristen's husband, Brett, would sink into the good armchair, the one with the soft leather and footrest, and talk endlessly about car sales and quarterly bonuses like anyone at that table cared. And then there was Lucy, my sweet, quiet, talented daughter. She sat at the far end of the table in a folding chair. A folding chair. The kind you pull out of a garage for extra guests. I'd asked my mother twice to give Lucy a real seat. Both times, Pamela waved me off. "We only have 6 chairs, Diana. Don't make this difficult." That should have been my first clue. They never saw Lucy as family. They saw her as less than. That particular Sunday in early September, 3 weeks before everything exploded, Kristen was in full complaint mode. She sat there with her wine glass, swirling it dramatically, talking about how hard her life was. "The boys are going stir-crazy," she said, sighing like she'd just described a war zone. "Every other house on our street has a pool. It's honestly embarrassing at this point. They need space. They need activities." My mother nodded with the intensity of someone hearing about a terminal diagnosis. "You're absolutely right, sweetheart. Those boys need room to play. They deserve it." My father grunted his agreement without looking up from his plate. That grunt was his version of a full speech. Lucy, sitting in her folding chair at the far corner, spoke up softly. "Grandpa, my recital is next month. I'm playing the Cello concerto. It's really hard, but I've been practicing every day." Silence. Gerald finally looked up, but not at Lucy. He looked at me, then back at his food. "Why doesn't she try a sport? Something normal, like her cousins?" I watched my daughter's face fall. She didn't cry. She just folded her napkin into a tiny, tight square and stared down at her plate. That was her tell. When Lucy folded things small and precise, it meant she was swallowing something too painful to say out loud. I changed the subject. I always changed the subject. I was so good at smoothing things over, at pretending everything was fine, at protecting Lucy from the truth that my own family didn't value her. What I didn't notice, what I should have noticed, was Kristen texting under the table. Her screen lit up for just a second, and I caught a glimpse of the words "pool contractor" and a number with way too many zeros behind it. I didn't think anything of it. I should have. The second week of September, my firm sent me to Seattle. We were handling a messy property dispute, and the senior partner needed someone on the ground to pull title records and coordinate with the opposing counsel's office. It wasn't glamorous. It was a courtyard Marriott, a rental car that smelled like air freshener, and 3 straight days of fluorescent-lit conference rooms. But it was my job. It paid the bills, and I was good at it. Lucy had music camp that same week. A 5-day intensive program at a middle school across town. They provided practice instruments for the students so Harriet would stay home. I tucked the cello carefully into its case in Lucy's bedroom, locked her door, and made sure everything was secure. Not because I was worried. Just habit. You protect what matters without even thinking about it. The morning I left for the airport, my mother called. "Let me hold on to your spare key while you're gone," she said, her voice sweet and casual. "Just in case there's an emergency." I didn't hesitate. I handed it over. Why wouldn't I? These were my parents. This was my family. I trusted them. That was my mistake. I landed in Seattle, checked into my hotel, and spent the next 2 days buried in paperwork. On the third day, I got a text from Lucy. She was staying at a friend's house after camp, so I didn't worry. Everything seemed fine. Normal. It wasn't until I got home, walked into the apartment, and saw Lucy's bedroom door wide open that I felt it. That cold drop in your stomach. That instinct that tells you something is horribly, horribly wrong. I stepped inside. The room looked the same. Bed made, desk organized. But the corner where Harriet's case always sat, where Lucy kept her best friend, her legacy, her heart, was empty. The cello was gone. I called Lucy immediately. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. "Sweetheart, where's Harriet?" Her voice came back small and confused. "In my room. In the case. Where she always is." "Lucy, she's not here. The case is gone. Everything's gone." There was a pause. Then I heard her breath hitch. And then she started to cry. That's when I knew. Someone had taken it. And I had a sinking feeling I knew exactly who. I tore through that apartment like a hurricane. I checked every closet, under every bed, behind every piece of furniture. I looked in places that didn't even make sense. Part of me was hoping I'd misremembered, that maybe I'd moved it, that maybe Lucy had taken it to camp after all. But I knew. Deep down, I knew. I called my mother. She answered on the fourth ring, her voice light and unbothered. "Diana, sweetheart, how was Seattle?" "Mom, where's Lucy's cello?" Silence, just long enough to confirm everything. "What do you mean?" she asked, and I could hear the false confusion in her tone. She was a terrible liar. "Harriet, Lucy's cello, it's gone. I came home and it's not in her room. You had the spare key. Where is it?" Another pause. Then she sighed, like I was being unreasonable. "Oh, that. Your father and I thought it was time Lucy learned the value of family sacrifice." I felt my entire body go cold. "What did you do?" "We sold it," she said, as casually as if she'd donated an old coat. "Kristen needed help with the pool, and that instrument was just sitting there collecting dust. We got a very fair price, $17,000. It's going towards something the whole family can enjoy." I couldn't breathe. I actually couldn't breathe. My vision blurred and my hands went numb, and I had to sit down on the floor because my legs wouldn't hold me anymore. "That wasn't yours to sell," I whispered. "You live in our property, Diana. Technically, everything in that apartment could be considered ours, but we were generous. We're family." I hung up. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just hung up, sat on the floor of my daughter's bedroom, and tried to figure out how I was going to tell Lucy that her entire world had just been stolen by her own grandparents. When Lucy came home an hour later, I was still sitting there. She saw my face, and she knew. She didn't ask. She just walked over, sat down beside me, and cried. We sat there together on the floor of her empty room and cried until we couldn't anymore. That night, I called Eleanor, my 91-year-old great-grandmother who lived alone in a small house on the other side of town, who still did her own gardening and made her own bread and had a mind sharper than most people half her age. I told her everything. I was expecting anger, maybe tears, maybe shock. Instead, she laughed. A short, dry laugh that sent chills down my spine. "They sold it," she said. It wasn't a question. It was confirmation. Like she'd been waiting for this. "Yes," I said. "For $17,000. They gave it all to Kristen for a pool. And they didn't contact me, didn't ask permission, didn't check the paperwork." "No." There was a pause. Then Eleanor said something I will never forget. "Good. That makes this much easier." "Makes what easier?" "Destroying them." she said calmly. Stay close to your phone, Diana. This won't take long. She hung up. I sat there staring at my phone, completely confused. What did she mean? What paperwork? What was she going to do? I didn't have to wait long to find out. 72 hours later, my mother called me. Her voice was shaking. She was crying. Actual tears. I'd never heard my mother cry before. Diana, you need to call off your grandmother. Please. This is insane. We're family. What are you talking about? The lawyer, the letter. She's taking everything. Please, you have to stop this. I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. What letter? I asked, even though I was starting to understand. My mother's voice cracked. The trust. The cello was in a trust, and now she's coming for the house. Our house. Everything. Please, Diana, fix this. I smiled. For the first time in days, I smiled. No, I said, and I hung up. Eleanor hadn't just protected the cello. She'd set a trap, and my parents had walked right into it. The next morning, I drove to Eleanor's house. She was in her garden, wearing gloves and a sun hat, pulling weeds like it was just another Tuesday. When she saw me, she stood up, brushed the dirt off her knees, and smiled. Took you long enough, she said. We went inside. Her house smelled like fresh bread and old books. She made tea, set out 2 cups, and sat down across from me at her small kitchen table. Then she pulled out a folder. A thick, official-looking folder with tabs and paperwork that looked like it had been organized by someone who'd spent a lifetime preparing for war. When I gave Lucy that cello, Eleanor began, I knew your parents would try something eventually. I've known Gerald and Pamela for 40 years, Diana. I know exactly who they are. I stared at her. You knew they'd steal it? I knew they'd see dollar signs, she said. I knew Kristen would come crying about something she wanted, and they'd look for the easiest way to fund it. I just didn't know when. She opened the folder and pulled out a document, the notarized gift letter I'd seen before. But underneath it was something else, something I'd never seen. This, Eleanor said, tapping the paper, is a revocable living trust. I created it 8 years ago. The cello was placed into that trust with Lucy named as the sole beneficiary. Your parents had no legal right to sell it, not even if they owned the apartment. Which, by the way, they don't. I blinked. What? Eleanor smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who'd been waiting years to play her final card. The property you're renting? The one they've been collecting rent from you for? The one they told you was theirs? It's mine. It's been in my trust since 2003. I let them manage it. I let them collect rent. I never bothered correcting them because it didn't matter. Until now. My jaw dropped. They've been lying to me for years? They've been lying to themselves, Eleanor said. They think because they manage the property, they own it. They don't. And now they've committed theft, fraud, and conversion of trust property. That's 3 felonies, Diana. She pulled out another document. This one had a law firm's letterhead at the top. I contacted my attorney the day you called me. He sent your parents a certified letter outlining the situation. They have 10 days to return the cello, return every cent of the $17,000, and sign an agreement acknowledging their wrongdoing. If they don't, we proceed with criminal charges and a civil lawsuit for triple damages. Triple damages? $51,000, Eleanor said calmly, plus attorney fees, plus the emotional distress caused to a minor child. We're talking well over $70,000 by the time we're done. I felt like I was in a dream, a beautiful, perfect dream. But that's not all, Eleanor continued. She pulled out another document. This one was even thicker. If they refuse to cooperate, I'm also moving forward with eviction proceedings. Not just for you. For them. Wait. What? They live in a house on Maple Street, correct? Yes. That house is also in my trust. I bought it in 1987. Let them live there rent-free after your father lost his job in the 90s. Never asked for a dime. Never formalized anything. But it's mine. And if they want to play games with my great-granddaughter's future, I'll take the roof from over their heads. I sat there, stunned. My 91-year-old great-grandmother had just declared legal war on my parents, and she had every weapon she needed to win. Eleanor, I whispered, why didn't you ever tell me? She reached across the table and took my hand. Her skin was soft, papery, but her grip was strong. Because you didn't need to know, but now you do. And now they'll learn something I should have taught them decades ago. She leaned forward, her eyes sharp and clear. You don't steal from family, and you definitely don't steal from me. I started to cry, not sad tears, relief, gratitude, justice. Eleanor handed me a tissue. Now, let's go get Harriet back. My parents didn't respond to the first letter. They ignored it, pretended it didn't exist. My mother called me twice more, begging me to talk sense into Eleanor. I didn't answer. My father sent a text that said, "You're being dramatic. We're trying to help the family. Help the family." That's what he called it. Stealing from a 10-year-old to build a pool for the golden child. Eleanor's attorney sent a second letter. This one wasn't polite. It outlined everything. The theft, the breach of trust, the fraudulent claim of ownership over properties they didn't own. It gave them 48 hours to respond or face a lawsuit that would be filed in county court and become part of the public record. That got their attention. 2 days later, my father showed up at Eleanor's house. I was there. Eleanor had asked me to be there. She wanted me to see it. He knocked on the door like he owned the place. Eleanor opened it, looked him up and down and said, "You're early. I didn't think you'd come crawling until tomorrow." "We need to talk," Gerald said. His voice was tight, angry. But underneath it, I heard something else. Fear. "No," Eleanor said. "You need to listen." She didn't invite him in. She stood in the doorway, a 91-year-old woman barely 5 feet tall, staring down a man who'd spent his whole life thinking he was in control. "You stole from my great-granddaughter," Eleanor said. "You broke into her home, took an item worth $17,000 and sold it without permission. That's theft. You then spent the money on a luxury item for your other daughter, which makes it conversion. And you did all of this under the mistaken belief that you had any legal right to that property. You didn't." "We were helping the family," Gerald said, but his voice faltered. "You were helping Kristen," Eleanor snapped. "You've always helped Kristen. You've given her everything while Diana worked 2 jobs and raised Lucy alone. And now you've stolen from that little girl because you thought no one would stop you. You were wrong." Gerald's face turned red. "That cello was just sitting there." "That cello," Eleanor said, her voice dropping to something ice-cold, "was in a trust. A legal trust, with documentation. Any reasonable person would have checked. But you didn't. Because you didn't care. You saw money and you took it. And now you're going to pay it back. Every cent, plus damages." "We don't have that kind of money," Gerald said. "Then sell the pool," Eleanor said. "Or take out a loan. Or sell your car. I don't care. But you will return what you stole, or I will take everything you think you own. Starting with the house you're living in." Gerald froze. "What are you talking about?" Eleanor smiled. It was the kind of smile that could cut glass. "The house on Maple Street. The one you've been living in since 1993. The one you think is yours. It's not. It's mine. It's been in my trust for 30 years. I let you stay there out of kindness. But kindness has limits." I watched my father's face go from red to white. He opened his mouth. closed it, opened it again. "You're bluffing," he finally said. Eleanor stepped aside and gestured to her lawyer, who'd been sitting quietly in the living room. He stood up, walked to the door, and handed my father a stack of papers. "Deed records," the lawyer said, "trust documents, property tax records, all showing Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore as the legal owner. You've been living there rent-free for decades. If she wants you out, you're out." Gerald looked at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. Then he looked at me. "Diana," he said, "please, tell her to stop." I met his eyes. For the first time in my life, I didn't look away. "No," I said. He stared at me. Then he turned and walked back to his car. Eleanor closed the door. "That went well," she said. I laughed. I actually laughed. It felt amazing. 3 days later, my mother called. Not my father. My mother. Her voice was different. Smaller. Defeated. "We'll return the money," she said. "All of it." "And the cello?" I asked. Silence. "Mom, where's the cello?" "We sold it to a private buyer," she said quietly. "A collector. We don't have his contact information. The shop handled it." My stomach dropped. "What shop?" "Westbridge Music, downtown. They brokered the sale." I hung up and immediately called Eleanor. 10 minutes later, we were in her car, driving to Westbridge Music. Eleanor drove like she was 20 years old. Fast, focused, and completely unbothered by stop signs. The shop was small, tucked between a dry cleaner and a coffee shop. Inside, it smelled like wood polish and old sheet music. A man in his 60s stood behind the counter, adjusting the strings on a violin. "Can I help you?" he asked. Eleanor walked right up to him. "3 weeks ago, you brokered the sale of a 1923 Heinrich Müller cello. I need the buyer's information." The man frowned. "I can't give out client information." Eleanor placed a document on the counter. "That cello was stolen. It was sold without the legal owner's consent. This is a copy of the trust document proving ownership. If you don't provide the buyer's contact information, you'll be named as an accessory in a theft case." The man's face went pale. He looked at the document, then at Eleanor, then at me. "I'll need to make a call," he said. 20 minutes later, we had a name and a phone number. The buyer was a retired music professor named Dr. Richard Klein. He lived 2 hours north in a town I'd never heard of. Eleanor called him right there in the parking lot. She put it on speaker. "Dr. Klein," she said. "My name is Eleanor Whitmore. You recently purchased a 1923 Heinrich Müller cello. I need it back." "I'm sorry," he said, his voice kind but firm. "I purchased that instrument legally. I have a bill of sale." "The people who sold it to you didn't own it," Eleanor said. "It was stolen from my great-granddaughter. I have documentation proving it was held in trust and sold without authorization." There was a pause. Then Dr. Klein sighed. "I paid $17,000 for that cello." "I'm aware," Eleanor said. "And I'm prepared to reimburse you in full. I'll also cover your travel costs if you're willing to meet us halfway." Another pause. Longer this time. "This cello," Dr. Klein said slowly. "It has a name engraved inside the case. Harriet." My breath caught. "Yes," I said, leaning toward the phone. "My daughter named it. She's had it since she was 7. Dr. Klein was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I have a granddaughter. She's 9. If someone stole her instrument, I'd burn the world down to get it back." I started crying. "I'll meet you," Dr. Klein said. "Tomorrow, noon. There's a rest stop off Highway 14. I'll bring the cello. You bring the check." "We'll be there," Eleanor said. The next day, we drove north. Lucy sat in the back seat, quiet and nervous. She hadn't said much since I told her we were getting Harriet back. I think she was afraid to hope. We pulled into the rest stop at 11:45. Dr. Klein was already there, standing beside his car. In his hands was a black cello case. Lucy saw it and her whole body went still. "Is that?" she whispered. "Go look," I said. She got out of the car slowly, like she was afraid it might disappear. Dr. Klein knelt down and opened the case. There she was. Harriet. Exactly as we'd left her. Lucy ran forward, dropped to her knees, and wrapped her arms around the cello. She didn't say anything. She just held it and cried. Dr. Klein looked at me, his eyes wet. "She's a lucky girl," he said. "No," I said. "We're the lucky ones." Eleanor handed him the check. He took it, nodded, and drove away. Lucy didn't let go of that cello the entire drive home. Getting Harriet back should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. Because Eleanor wasn't finished. 2 weeks later, my parents received another letter. This one wasn't from Eleanor's attorney. It was from the county assessor's office. Inside was a bill. Property taxes. For the house on Maple Street. The house my parents had been living in for 30 years. They called me, furious. "This is a mistake," my father said. "We've always paid our taxes." "No," I said calmly. "Eleanor paid the taxes. Because it's her house." "That's insane," he said. "We've lived here for decades." "Rent-free," I said. "As a favor. A favor you repaid by stealing from your granddaughter." He hung up on me. But the letters didn't stop. Next came a notice of eviction proceedings. Eleanor wasn't bluffing. She was actually moving forward with it. My parents had 60 days to vacate the property or face formal eviction. My mother called me crying. "We have nowhere to go, Diana, please. We're your parents." "You should have thought of that before you sold Harriet," I said. "We made a mistake," she sobbed. "We'll do anything, please." "Then pay Lucy back," I said. "Not just the $17,000. Pay her for the emotional damage, the trauma, the betrayal. Pay her what you owe." There was silence on the other end. Then my mother hung up. A week later, Eleanor called me. "They've hired a lawyer," she said. She didn't sound worried. She sounded amused. "What are they claiming?" I asked. "Adverse possession. They're arguing that because they've lived in the house for so long, they have a legal claim to it." I felt a flash of panic. "Can they win?" "No," Eleanor said. "Adverse possession requires that their occupancy was hostile. They lived there with my permission. I have 30 years of utility records, tax payments, and written correspondence proving I owned it the entire time. Their lawyer knows this. He's just billing them for hours." She was right. 2 weeks later, their case was dismissed. The judge didn't even let it go to trial. My parents were ordered to vacate the property within 30 days. I didn't feel good about it. But I didn't feel bad either. They'd made their choice. Kristen called me once during all of this. Just once. "You're really going to let them lose their house?" she said. Her voice was sharp, accusing. "I didn't do this," I said. "They did." "Over a stupid cello?" I felt my blood boil. That stupid cello was worth $17,000. It was Lucy's future, her legacy, and they sold it to build you a pool. "We needed that pool," Kristen said. "No," I said. "You wanted it. There's a difference." She hung up. We haven't spoken since. My parents moved out of the house on Maple Street 3 weeks later. They rented a small apartment on the other side of town. I heard through a cousin that they had to sell most of their furniture to afford the deposit. Eleanor didn't keep the house. She sold it. Used the money to set up a college fund for Lucy. Every cent. "She's going to need it," Eleanor said, "especially if she wants to study music." I hugged her. This woman who'd fought for my daughter when no one else would, who'd stood up to my parents with nothing but paperwork and a spine made of steel. "Thank you," I whispered. "Don't thank me," she said. "I just did what anyone with half a brain would do. I protected my family. The family that actually matters. A month later, Lucy had her recital. She played the Elgar cello concerto. Every note was perfect. When she finished, the audience stood and applauded. Eleanor was in the front row, crying. After the performance, Lucy ran to her, still holding Harriet, and threw her arms around her. "I did it, Great-Grandma," she said. "I knew you would," Eleanor said. I stood there watching them, thinking about how close we'd come to losing everything, how my parents had almost destroyed my daughter's future for a swimming pool. But they didn't win, because Eleanor had been ready. And now, Lucy was safe. Life didn't just go back to normal, it became something better, something quieter, something ours. Lucy practiced every day, just like before. But now, when she played, there was something different in the sound. Confidence, strength. She'd been through something terrible and come out the other side with Harriet still in her hands. That changed her. She stopped asking about her grandparents. At first, I thought maybe she was bottling it up. But one afternoon, while she was rosining her bow, she said something that broke my heart and healed it at the same time. "Mom, do you think they ever really loved me?" I sat down beside her. I wanted to lie. I wanted to tell her that of course they did, but I couldn't. "I think they loved the idea of you," I said, "but they didn't value you. And that's on them, not you." She nodded. "Great-Grandma Eleanor values me." "She does," I said. "More than anything." Lucy smiled. "Then that's enough." And just like that, she went back to practicing, like she'd closed a door and locked it. I envied that ability. It took me a lot longer. I kept waiting for my parents to reach out, to apologize, to acknowledge what they'd done. They never did. The only communication I got was a single text from my father 6 months later. It said, "You turned your grandmother against us. I hope you're happy." I deleted it. Kristen sent a Christmas card that year. It had a photo of her family in front of their new pool. Everyone was smiling. I threw it away without opening the envelope. Eleanor, meanwhile, became even more involved in Lucy's life. She started coming to every recital, every rehearsal, every performance. She'd sit in the audience with her hands folded in her lap, listening like she was at Carnegie Hall all over again. One afternoon, Lucy asked her, "Great-Grandma, why did you give me Harriet?" Eleanor looked at her for a long time. Then she said, "Because I knew you'd protect her, and I knew she'd protect you." "How can a cello protect me?" Lucy asked. Eleanor smiled. "Because people will try to take things from you your whole life, Lucy, your time, your dreams, your future. But if you know what matters, if you hold on to it tight and refuse to let go, they can't touch you. Harriet isn't just a cello. She's a reminder. You are worth fighting for." Lucy thought about that. Then she hugged Eleanor tight. I watched them and realized something. Eleanor hadn't just saved the cello. She'd saved Lucy's sense of self-worth. She'd shown her that she mattered, that she deserved to be protected. That family wasn't just about blood. It was about who showed up when it mattered. A year later, Eleanor passed away, peacefully in her sleep, at the age of 92. We found her in the morning, lying in her bed, with a book open on her chest. She looked like she was resting. At the funeral, the lawyer read her will. She'd left almost everything to Lucy, the house we were renting, which she signed over with instructions that we could live there rent-free for as long as we wanted. A trust fund for Lucy's college education. And a letter. The letter was addressed to Lucy. I read it aloud at her request. "My dearest Lucy," it began, "by the time you read this, I'll be gone, but Harriet will still be with you. Play her often. Play her loud. Play her with joy. And remember that the people who tried to take her from you failed. Not because of me, because of you. You are stronger than you know, braver than you believe, and more loved than you can imagine. Don't ever forget that. With all my love, Great-grandma Eleanor. Lucy cried. I cried. We held each other and cried until we couldn't anymore. That night, Lucy played Harriet in the living room. She played Eleanor's favorite piece, a soft, haunting melody that filled the house. And for a moment, I swear I felt Eleanor there with us, smiling, listening, proud. We were going to be okay, because Eleanor had made sure of it. 2 years after Eleanor passed, Lucy turned 13. She auditioned for a prestigious youth orchestra and got in. First chair, youngest member in the program's history. When she told me, she was glowing. Mom, they said Harriet's sound is unlike anything they've ever heard from someone my age. That's because Harriet has history, I said. She's been played in concert halls by masters. That sound lives in the wood. Lucy nodded seriously. I'm going to make great-grandma proud. You already have, I said. But life had one more surprise waiting for us. A few months into the orchestra season, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. Is this Diana? A woman's voice asked. Yes. Who's this? My name is Margaret Klein. I'm Dr. Richard Klein's daughter. We met briefly a few years ago when my father returned your daughter's cello. I remembered. The kind man who'd driven 2 hours to meet us, who'd understood what Harriet meant. Yes, I remember, I said. Is everything okay? My father passed away last month, she said quietly. My heart sank. I'm so sorry. Thank you. I'm calling because he left something in his will. Instructions, actually, about your daughter. I frowned. What kind of instructions? He left her a scholarship, Margaret said. A full scholarship to any music conservatory of her choice. He set it up a year ago. He said that any child who loved an instrument enough to fight for it deserved the chance to become a master. I couldn't speak. Tears were streaming down my face. He told me the story, Margaret continued. How your family stole the cello. How your grandmother fought to get it back. How your daughter held it and cried when she saw it again. He said it was the most beautiful thing he'd ever witnessed. He wanted to make sure she had every opportunity to keep playing. I don't know what to say, I whispered. Say you'll tell her, Margaret said. Say you'll tell her that a man she barely knew believed in her. I will, I said. I promise. When I told Lucy, she sat down on the couch and stared at the wall for a full minute. He did that for me? She finally said. He did. But why? Because he saw something in you, I said. The same thing Eleanor saw. The same thing I see. You're special, Lucy. And people who recognize that want to protect it. She looked down at her hands. I'm going to work so hard, Mom. I'm going to make everyone who believed in me proud. You already do, I said. That summer, we went back to the rest stop where we'd met Dr. Klein. Lucy wanted to see it again, to remember. We stood there in the parking lot, the wind blowing warm and soft. And Lucy held Harriet's case close. Thank you, she whispered to the air. To Dr. Klein, to Eleanor, to everyone who'd fought for her. And then she opened the case, right there in the parking lot, and played. She played a piece she'd written herself, a tribute, a thank you, a promise. People stopped, drivers getting gas, families on road trips. They stood and listened. When she finished, someone started clapping. Then everyone joined in. Lucy smiled. A real, full, unbreakable smile. That's when I knew. She was going to be okay. Better than okay. She was going to be extraordinary. Because she'd learned something most people never learn. That the people who try to tear you down don't define you. The people who fight for you do. And she'd been fought for by the best. My parents never apologized. Kristen never reached out. And honestly, it didn't matter anymore. We'd moved on. We'd built a life without them. A better life. Lucy had her music, her future, her dreams. And she had Harriet. The cello that had survived theft, betrayal, and greed. The cello that had brought strangers together and torn a family apart. The cello that would carry her forward into whatever came next. We were free. We were safe. And we were exactly where we were supposed to be. That's the story of how my parents stole my daughter's $17,000 cello and how my 91-year-old great-grandmother made sure they paid for it. Not with anger, not with shouting, but with paperwork, strategy, and a lifetime of knowing exactly who she was dealing with. Lucy is 15 now. She's thriving. She'll be starting at a top music conservatory next year, fully funded by Dr. Klein's scholarship and Eleanor's trust. Harriet goes everywhere with her. They're inseparable. My parents still live in that small apartment across town. We haven't spoken in years. Kristen still has her pool. I hope it was worth it. Eleanor taught us something I'll never forget. Protect what matters. Stand up for the people who can't stand up for themselves. And never, ever underestimate a woman who knows how to read a contract. If this story moved you, please subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell icon so you never miss another story like this one. Drop a comment and let me know what you think. And if you've ever had to fight for something you love, know that you're not alone. Thank you for listening. Lucy and I are going to be just fine, and Harriet is finally home.